Hello and welcome to the Queensborough Community College Academic Literacy online tutorial video on sample essay and responses. Now with 50% more beef. Today we're going to look at an article called The Power of a Smile by Yavelda Fletcher. We're going to read this together, so here we go. Recently, I spent a particularly difficult day in New York City, wandering around feeling frustrated and angry and seeing nothing but frowns in the people who passed me by on the sidewalk. People in New York City often seem to go out of their way to avoid contact with other people, and they often look rushed and bothered on the busy streets and subways in the city. Rather than try to ignore the faces around me and try to deal with my own bad mood, I decided to take a different approach. I decided to spend the next week of my life smiling at any and every person I saw. At first, it felt very odd to smile at complete strangers, and it seemed like my attempts to smile would seem fake to those who looked at me. I felt uncomfortable and believed that I probably was making other people uncomfortable in a city where it seems like the custom is to pretend no one else exists but themselves. After a day of awkward attempts at smiling, though, people started smiling back at me. I also noticed those who smiled back seemed to relax for an instant, as their facial expressions and body posture slightly changed. Every time this happened, it made me want to smile at someone else, and it made me feel a little more positive about my day. It also made me wonder whether smiling is contagious. The act of smiling actually releases a chemical called dopamine in our brains. This chemical, which also is released when we drink coffee or alcohol, or we exercise or fall in love, makes us feel pleasure. In an article in Psychology Today, Professor Gary Wenk describes how walking around with a smile will cause our bodies to release dopamine and feel happier, even if we force ourselves at first to put on a fake smile. He goes on to say that by smiling, not only will you be happier, but your smile might spontaneously induce the release of dopamine in someone else's brain. Now that truly demonstrates the power of a smile. The possibilities for sharing a smile seem promising. It is such a simple act, and it can make an individual and all who see her happier. Maybe other small positive acts, like laughter or eye contact, can too. Choose a significant idea, right? So now we've read the article together, and now we are faced with the daunting task, of choosing something significant out of all of those paragraphs that we've read. Now, here they are. Well, I seem to like something stuck out at me right there. After a day of awkward attempts at smiling, people started smiling back. I'm right here. I also noticed those who smiled back seemed to relax for an instant as their facial expressions and body posture slightly changed. Every time this happened, it made me want to smile at someone else. So people started smiling back at the author. Focusing in on that. Those who smiled back seemed to relax. So actually their bodies were changing when she smiled at them, right? Their facial expressions changed. Their body posture, how they were holding themselves, then maybe their shoulders were up. They relaxed. They seemed to relax. I also noticed those who smiled back. So if you see, this is the whole article. So we're kind of zooming in on this paragraph and then zooming in on this sentence, right? We've taken a magnifying glass to this one idea that stuck out at us, jumped out at us. We're going to focus even deeper by brainstorming. Those who smiled, relaxed, facial expressions and body posture changed. So in other words, people who smile experience relaxation, their face and their body changed. All of these things can be grouped in a blender to physical mental health, right? It can also be boiled down to the fact that simple changes, such as smiling, can make you relax, and somebody who is relaxed is healthier, is more social, is happier, right? It's not rocket science. Simple changes can have long-lasting impacts. This is a concept now. We've reached a concept. We are no longer discussing smiling on the street in New York City, if the weather was cold or hot, if the subway was noisy. We're talking about the concept, the idea behind that detail. We've conceptualized. Simple changes can have long-lasting impacts on ourselves and others. So this is a shared experience between people or between penguins. Those who smiled relaxed, facial expressions and body posture changed. Here's my significant idea paragraph using the concept that we discussed here on the bottom, that simple changes can have long-lasting impacts, the idea also of physical and mental health. Let's zip past the penguins again. Those who smiled, relaxed, facial expressions and body posture changed. Here's my significant idea paragraph. Most significant to me is how the author described the effects of her smiling at others as noticeable physiological or of the body shifts. This is significant because in the world today, so many suffer from physical and or mental illness. They are given prescriptions of medication to address these symptoms, like taking Tylenol for a headache, for example. However, what actually caused the illness is never really discussed or addressed. I am no specialist, but it doesn't take a degree in medicine to speculate or wonder how something as simple as smiling at someone can show love to that person, give them a sense of belonging, of not being a stranger, but someone of value. Affecting someone's mind, even in a small positive way, will inevitably affect their body. This is a beautiful idea with potentially great outcomes, health benefits, and everyone can do it. So, just a couple of things that we should focus on here that are successful about this paragraph. This is significant because in the world today. Now, the first sentence, most significant to me, is shows your reader, shows your grader, that what you've chosen as your significant idea. There's no need to beat around the bush. There's no need to be indirect about this. Most significant to me is, or My significant idea is. Either of those will work just fine. And I tell you very directly how the author described the effects of her smiling at others as noticeable changes in their body, physiological shifts or changes. Now I'm going to tell you why this is significant to me. This is significant because in the world today, these words allow you to take the concept from the article and apply it to what's outside of your window, what's on the news every day, people you know, people in your family, people at work, people you see every day, people you don't see every day. In the world today allows you, the writer, to look outside, to look at yourself, and to ask questions, and to wonder. Allow yourself to wonder, because wondering is a way of writing a development. In the world today, back to the article here, so many people suffer from some kind of illness. These people are given medications like Tylenol, for example. But what gave that person a headache in the first place? Maybe they're not drinking enough water, right? It could be something as simple as that. A lot of times, these physical ailments can be caused by some kind of mental slump that you might be in. And I say, I'm not trying to pretend here. I'm no specialist. I'm not a doctor. But it doesn't take a degree in medicine to wonder how something as simple as smiling can show love to a person, give them a sense of belonging, and therefore feels happier. This person will feel happier. Now, it's very related to the article. However, it's been developed. This is what we shouldn't do. This is the kind of paragraph that we would see in the Writing Center. And we're going to discuss what it does incorrectly. Let's read this together. My significant idea is I agree with the author how he says it also made me wonder whether smiling is contagious. Smiling is my favorite activity, and more people should smile because it makes them feel happy. Like the author said, when you smile, it releases endorphins, which are good for you, so it makes you healthy as well. However, sometimes you feel sad. For example, one time my cousin, he got a test back in maths class and was very upset because he needed that class to graduate. So I told him to smile. Moreover, when he smiled, he wasn't sad anymore, even though he still failed the class. In conclusion, you see how smiling is contagious, and we should all smile more! Exclamation point. Okay. This is a student focused on following directions that they've been given to agree or disagree at the cost of actually telling the reader what is significant to them. It's okay to agree or disagree sometimes, definitely, but it doesn't fit every article. If there are no opinions in the article, for example, how could you agree with just facts? It doesn't work. It sounds weird. And ultimately, it doesn't pass you. Smiling is my favorite activity, and more people should smile because it makes them feel happy. These are ideas more or less from the article directly. There's no new information here. Like the author said, when you smile, it releases endorphins. So this is the attempt of a quote that didn't quite make it there. There's a spelling error here, endolphins. They meant, of course, endorphins. But still, no new information, no development here. However, sometimes you feel sad. Okay, what is your point? For example, so now we have an example here. Oftentimes when a student doesn't know how to discuss their significant idea, doesn't know what's significant to them about the significant idea that they have chosen, they will fall back on giving an example right away. So in this case, for example, one time my cousin, he got a test back in math class and was very upset, etc., etc., etc. Moreover, when he smiled, he wasn't sad anymore. So the writer is saying, this situation happened to somebody I know, or I've made up a situation which is just like your article. That counts as a development, right? Wrong, it doesn't. It does not. In conclusion, you see how smiling is contagious, and we should all smile more. It also made me wonder whether smiling is contagious. That's a quote, so it should be under quotation marks, right? When you smile, rather, it releases endorphins, right? We talked about that. For example, this is supposed to be a new paragraph. New paragraph. Smiling affects health. This is what we need to focus on. Let's get focused here. Focus on the relationship. You cannot write your development strictly about smiling. You cannot write your development strictly on health. It needs to be how one thing affects the other thing. Discuss how they affect each other. Potential long-term effects or results. Maybe potential harm, something that's not good for you. Of course, you would have to show that you understand the difference, the relationship, the contrast, but it's still open, open to be discussed. If you have any questions about this, please don't hesitate to contact us. We are accepting your assignments that are listed below for this lesson. And of course, we always have tutors available in room H237 in the Humanities building, right next to the computer lab on the second floor. Thank you for watching. Please feel free to watch any other video on Blackboard or to play back any part. There's some sections of this lesson were a little bit dense, we're a little bit busy, so that's why we have included these videos here for you to look back at your own time. Thank you again. Be seeing you.